Just plain Bill. And this is Thought Swallow Thinking, and these opinions are mine. And I appreciate you liking and subscribing.
The hen house, to say that the Nazis are running the Nuremberg trials, to say that the candy man is the dentist. The Corleone family is the head of the gambling commission here. I mean, it's obscene.
Bill, back to Earth, please.
At least back to Earth.
What we now have are people who are competent in the fields that they are working on. We now know more about environmental responsibility.
Because they're used to evading them.
Because they understand.
Yeah, you have to give them credit for one thing. You have to give them credit. They're out in the open now. They're out in the open now. They're not even trying to conceal it anymore. The owners of the country they got their election. They said, we're going to get this election. We put you people in that court for a reason.
Right,
now's the time to pay us.
Back to Earth for you now.
Yeah, forget all that stupid, will you? They're out in the open. They're openly driving the bus, and we're all in the back.
There is no national conspiracy to buy elections and control America. Now
talk about back to Earth.
That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem that we have, is that people make these kind of irrational statements.
Unfortunately, George Bush has the right to put anyone he wants in his cabinet. It's our shame on us for electing him.
You're right.
Shame on you.
That's right.
You're right. Shame on everyone who voted for Ralph Nader. We can thank Ralph.
Oh, blame it on Ralph Nader. Right.
Why? Everyone who voted for him blew the election, and everyone said Gore and Bush.
Al Gore blew the election because he was so afraid that Monica Lewinsky. Never mind.
No, he was too afraid to have President Clinton, who was popular at that time.
But he would have been better than this, and he would have protected the environment.
I don't challenge the facts that you present, that those backgrounds are there. What I challenge is the idea that there's some kind of conspiracy about this.
Now I get to talk.
What we haven't had, let me just make this quick point. What we haven't had is a serious question about what to do with all of the energy needs that we have in America. A bunch of liberals want to tell people, you can't drive this car, you can't have these lights on, you can't have a swimming pool. That's the attitude of people who don't understand what business is like.
You know what you can have now? You can have gas for $3 a gallon. You can be in California and have blackouts all the time. Right. Because of these energy policies.
And I love this. Because of the energy policies that were created here in California, not as a result of a conspiracy, but because...
You don't need a formal conspiracy.
Right.
When interests converge, these people went to the same universities and fraternities, they're on the same boards of directors, they're in the same country clubs, they have like interests, they don't need to call a meeting, they know what's good for them, and they're getting it. And there used to be 7 oil companies, there are now 3, it will soon be 2. The things that matter in this country have been reduced in choice. There are 2 political parties. There are a handful of insurance companies. There are about 6 or 7 information things. But if you want a bagel, there are 23 flavors because you have the illusion. You have the illusion of choice.
Right.
You don't get the real important choice. There's no freedom of choice.
That's a great point. Right. And speaking of $3 a gallon for gasoline, which may finally, as to address your point, wake people up, and you're right. I have no sympathy, as I said last week, for the little guy. Because the little guy...
I like that. That was
right, exactly. Because he doesn't care. He's never conserved well. He drives an SUV, and he doesn't think this through. Okay, $3 a gallon for gasoline. What did Bush say about it last week? We can't really help you, but if you passed my tax cut, that'll give you the money to pay for that $3. Hey, George, why don't you just cut out the middleman and cut the check right to Exxon?
That's you.
That's right.
You don't need... And it's the voter.
Oh, Bill, that sounds so cool.
Well, that's what he's saying.
That sounds so cool. But how is it that it's fair for you to say that the little guy doesn't know any better if he wants to drive an SUV? It's his right to drive an SUV. If you want to run your computer at home on the internet and you want to keep it on for 8 hours and pay the bill, it's your right to do that. That's what it means to live in a free society.
If we had public transportation,
No one wants public transportation for themselves. It's for the other guy.
No, people do want it.
Put him on the bus.
And
Make him ride across
People would
town.
like to drive vehicles that get more than 10 miles to a gallon, but they can't buy them.
They would like to drive vehicles that get... that's flatly not true.
But you speak...
The Volkswagen diesel Beetle. The Volkswagen diesel Beetle gets 45 miles to the gallon. People don't want that. They don't want to buy it.
But
they
you
want
speak as if we live in a world of infinite resources, which we don't.
No, but we don't live in a world where we need greater coercion by the government telling you, you can't have this, you can't live there.
Of course we do. Dick Cheney said last week we don't need to conserve.
We need to go up to the Arctic and get in there.
Why? Because there's no money in conservation.
Now, if you really, like me, were concerned about the little guy, you would say, since we can explore the Arctic without destroying the area, we ought to make that
drill a few holes
available.
How can you do it without destroying
bird species, really?
The 80s, and we haven't had the problem. In fact, the biggest
any problems with the environment since
oil
the 80s?
spills that we have had have come from tankers.
Why don't we find the last snow leopard and drill right into him? Maybe we could get oil right out of the endangered species themselves.
I just think you liberals ought to admit, we want to tell you, we got a new national nanny, and we're going to tell you when you can keep your lights on, what kind of vehicles you can drive, how you can get to work, what hours you can keep. Just tell us you're going to control us, and that would cut the middleman out, too.
You frame it as if that's fascism.
That is.
But in a world of limited resources,
in a free society, you should be...
For people who pretend to be leaders to tell us, you know what, conservation, not really a good idea.
They didn't say
Building
that.
more
Yes,
They did not say that. What they did say was having the government come in and tell you what you can do is not the policy that they would embrace.
So having the oil companies and the corporations and the boards of directors tell us what we can do.
You are not required to buy an SUV.
Business should run things.
You are not required to run your electricity. You're not required. There are a number of things that you have control over.
How can you run a home without electricity?
What's that?
How can you run your home without electricity?
I figured out when I got my bill back in February that was 3 times the size. I went to the master block and knocked off a number of those items because I didn't want to have to pay the electricity.
Okay.
Appreciate you watching and subscribing. And that's all, folks.